Question Everything was born out of a desire for curiosity, a love for people's stories, and a deep belief that through open and honest conversations, freedom can be found. Freedom from shame, from judgment, and from fear. So let's talk about the stuff we've been hiding from. Let's say the things we were told not to say. And let's ask the questions we've been wanting to ask, but have been too scared to. Because when we question everything, everything changes. Let's go. Welcome to episode 4 of Question Everything. So, life's great, right? Life teaches you what you need to know when you're ready to know it. And it has a great way of reminding you about things too. So I am reading Will Smith's book, or listening to it on audiobook. And one thing he talks about is, one, it's preparation, but it's also being paying attention to the opportunities, paying attention to what he calls the magic. And that's kind of what this episode is about. I was starting to recap my conversation and talk about think about what I wanted to share here. And just had this moment of life kind of hitting me outside the head and be like, hey, here's what you need to know at this moment. And this is what you need to do with it. So last week's episode with my friend Eli, it was titled "A Pastor, a Lesbian, and a Catholic Walk into Lunch." And it feels so timely, as I'll share about in my own life, but also with society right now, right? We're coming off terrible, terrible mass shootings. There's a huge divide between those who want more gun protections, more strict laws for access and the Second Amendment. There's a lot of reproductive rights going on with abortion rights and what that looks like. And so there's a lot of divide right now, right? And so this is why this episode feels really timely, but also, like I said, with my own personal life. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about something that's really relevant about, is this divide too big? This was something that really came out when Eli talked about things. And he said, I just questioned, was the divide going to be too big? And until we had that conversation, I had no clue that he had some judgment around that, right? I had no clue that he was just as worried about me judging him as I was of him judging me. And that was a really big aha for me because when we're feeling that judgment, it's oftentimes, it is personal. So we forget that the other person has this personal side to it. And I never once stopped to think, he was feeling equally as judged and maybe afraid, right? Because in my mind, I felt it was this hierarchy, right? Of I felt like I don't want to say minority, but I felt like the subordinate. I felt like the judgment of religion was overcoming the judgment of being a Christian, right? And so we talked about that big divide and was it possible to even get past that? And he shared something that was really important for him was this benefit of the doubt. And so, I started, and now I find myself in a very, very similar position. So next week is my dad's celebration of life. And, I know I'm going to be walking into a room of judgment. And in the same breath, I can say I'm going to be walking into the room with some judgment, right? My dad was very, very adamant on what his thoughts on what a gay person, what happens to them, the ideas of, what happens to them, his belief of it being a sin and all of that. And so I know that's from people in his church too, right? I know that there's been some things going on with the celebration of life, if that's kind of reintroduced. So yeah, my hackles are up, right? I'm anxious about going into a place that is full of judgment with people not even knowing an inkling probably of who I am as a human being. It doesn't feel great, right? But like I said, if I stop and I have that awareness and I have that piece of I'm not perfect, I am doing the exact same, right? My assumption is that they all feel that same way, and I don't know that. And even if they do, is that something that I'm willing to open myself up just to be with those people, right? Because there is that commonality of my father. And so, yeah, it's so funny because I was like, oh crap, look at life coming back to reteach you a lesson. And I love the timing of all of this. So will this divide be too big when I go back? Can I kind of open myself up and give the benefit of the doubt, knowing that there could be some hurt there, right? Can I be that person 20 years ago that gave Eli the benefit of the doubt, right? And yes, there's a lot more history here. There's a lot more effects of their beliefs, but who do I want to be? And I'm going to try, right? It doesn't feel easy. It feels a little daunting. It feels a little scary, but I really do want to try because I want to, um, you know, open myself up to be the person that I am with everybody else, with a group of people that I may not have any trust with. So here's kind of what I'm doing in preparation for that piece. Again, I'm focusing on when I leave Farmington, when I come back home, I want to be proud of who I was. I want to be proud of how I showed up. I want to be proud of my behavior, right? And that doesn't necessarily, and what that looks like, um, I'm not 100% sure still, but I think I want to be open to what others say, right? Even when it's not really aligned with my view of, my perception. I want to honor my dad for the good that he did. He was a good human. I do have some great memories, and really staying true to that, right? Not getting caught up in all the crap that has created a distance. I'm going to be compassionate and open and friendly with these people. They have their beliefs just like I have mine. And I just want to be the person that I am with everybody else in my life when I do feel safe with those people. And so, yeah, my outcome is to be this version of me for those people, even when I don't feel totally comfortable. So, and also, this is something that everybody talks about, right? Like, other people's opinion is none of your business, or what they say to you doesn't matter. And in theory, yes, but that's really hard for us, right? Because it does feel personal. But I'm really having to go into the situation. Other people's opinions have zero to do with me. They have, from belief systems, from preconceived ideas, like, it has zero to do with Holly, right? And this is some of the hardest work of self-development, because it's really hard to say, yeah, I know it's not like personal, but it feels pretty damn personal, right? And it's hard to know that that's not. But I'm going to say to you that, their opinion has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with my worth, with my value. You know, they can have their responses and I can have mine. And so that's how I'm kind of going into this, that their opinions have zero to do with me. And also, looking if I can pull myself back, which I try and do a lot of times, mine has nothing to do with them, right? They've done nothing to me, but it's this preconceived ideas that I've created this distance going into it. So that's my other piece. And the last thing is kind of really, staying true to my truth, and let others stay true to their truth. One thing that's been really interesting for me in all this is realizing, you know, we we have different perceptions of who somebody can be, right? And they're both absolutely true. And so really being open to that and knowing that my truth is my truth, and I am perfectly, it's okay for me to feel that way. And also giving that back to the other people, right? Because I can't ask for that and then not give it to the other people. So that's how I'm kind of working through that place of, this experience I had with Eli, almost 20 years ago, of opening myself up, benefit of the doubt, creating kindness. That's what I'm trying to take in with me, going into next week. And so again, so timely. One thing else that we had closed on is, I had asked Eli, what was something you questioned that changed everything? And he said, absolutely, my religion. And I thought this was such a great share. And I mean, he touched on it throughout the episode, but really honing in, like, questioning is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. Questioning his faith was one of the biggest things that he questioned. And, like, I would say that was one of his top things that was important to me, right? Probably along with his family. And that by questioning his faith, by asking some questions, by digging in, it ended up being so much better, right? So much better. Like, I have grappled a lot with religion. I still am grappling a lot with religion. And one thing that I do believe is that, excuse me, is that God, is big enough to handle my questioning, right? Like, God creates all this magical, beautiful earth, and every single magical human being, like, he can take some questioning, right? And so often we don't want to question because we think it's either a weakness or a sign that something's not important. And I don't think that could be farther from the truth. I think strong relationships, strong beliefs, like, need to be questioned, right? It just reaffirms why we have those in the first place. It's even, faith, a job, a relationship. If you're, like, in a marriage and you're just like, is this it? Like, embrace that, right? And instead of pushing it aside, like, well, this is my decision. I'm not saying leaving a marriage, if you decide to do that, that's your decision. But questioning provides that reaffirmment, right? And things change, right? We should be questioning our life, right? The decisions, what you defined, as 15 years ago success is probably not your success today. And so I think it's so important to remember that if you are starting to question something, right, that you can say, hey, this relationship is really important to me, or my career, or the way I'm parenting, or this faith, yes, it's important to me. And I'm going to allow myself to say, what does it look like now? Do I still believe this piece of it? Like, what does it look like moving forward? Because I think what was so great is, the power of questioning something so important can be really scary, but it can really just reaffirm why we have that belief in the first place, or open us up to new things that we really do want, right? So often we make a decision and we just stick with it. And all of a sudden, 10 years later, you're just like, is this what I want to do anymore? I mean, it was when I was 22, but is it when I'm 37, 47, 50, 67, right? So understanding it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. None of those things. It just means you care enough about what that is to challenge it, right? Like, it's safety in a relationship, it's discussions, it's disagreements, because that's a nodding bobblehead to the rest of your life is not going to be a fulfilling life. So just really touching in on that as well. And, again, full circle, life coming back to you. I am a card note letter hoarder. First of all, I've got stacks of cards. I have my own card line. I keep every card anybody ever sends me for the most part. And so I was going through some old photos and the cards this past weekend to send to find some like photos for my dad's memorial. And I found this letter, and I want to share a little piece of it because, again, what the world needs you to hear. It was so timely. It was actually a letter from Eli that he sent me when he left ASA. So I just want to read a little bit of it. So I think it kind of reaffirmed what we talked about, and it was so great because this was probably in 2006, 2007, so about 15 years ago. So there's some other stuff, but with that being said, I now owe you a huge thank you. You have an amazing coworker for the last 2.5 years. First, you protected my innocence from Megan. Megan's a whole nother episode. She's a whole nother series. Not many people have a Megan in their life. That was my side note. And then he says, well, I don't know if that's possible, but you did your best. Next, you were always willing to be a friend to me. You gave me sound advice, always listened to my complaints, probably more than you wanted to, and we're always up for a picnic. I consider you a good friend and look forward to hanging out with you outside of work when we can in the future. I know the Lord blessed me with your friendship while I was at ASA. You were able to teach me a lot of things, and I am so thankful you were there when I was there. Also, I have to say you taught me a lot about life. I came to ASA as a sheltered, naive, arrogant kid, and you helped me mature and grow both professionally and spiritually. I thoroughly enjoyed our deep spiritual conversations and love that you are well-read and can intelligently discuss a book. I also love some of your views on God and spirituality. I think you have a unique relationship with God, and I know that he is very fond of you. You also taught me a great deal about the dangers of judging people before you really know them. I mentioned the whole shelter thing, and you helped me to unshelter, if that's a word, me. Ooh, that still like gives me the chills. That piece of he is very fond of you. Like, God is very fond of you. That was such a blessing then, and it's such a blessing now. And I love what, he said, like, I mentioned the shelter thing and you helped to unshelter me. And, sheltering is an interesting word because I think we use that a lot. And so I looked up the definition of shelter, and it's a place giving temporary protection from bad weather or danger. And it's also to protect or shield from something harmful, especially bad weather. Sheltering was never meant to be our full-time status. It was never supposed to be a goal for us to have. We weren't meant to stay sheltered forever, right? And so how often do we shelter ourselves from things that would in turn enrich our life, right? Yes, there are absolutely times and moments that we need shelter, that we need respite, that we need protection. But I believe so many of us shelter our lives when we know deep down that maybe when we got out, our beliefs would be questioned, our thoughts, our ideas, that like if we got out of this sheltered place, our world would be rocked, right? We could see in things that we can unsee and know things we can unknow, right? And so we can shelter ourselves from things that we think are scary or bad. And then when we start to open them up, we're like, oh, wow, like I never needed to shelter myself from those things, right? And I think it's totally normal that we do these sheltering, right? We were raised a certain way. We have certain beliefs, like it's safe. A shelter is safe, right? But it's also you're not getting to experience the fullness of the world. And I love that piece of, to unshelter, right? So what would that look like for you? Where do you need to unshelter in your life? I think that we think of unsheltering as typically like very naive, very like good, like we shelter, like, oh, I'm sheltered, I don't know what I'm doing, right? But we all build shelters in our life, right? Like for me, going into next weekend, it's building a shelter around myself for this, what I'm nervous about walking into, right? But maybe it's a part of you that you just don't show, that you shelter a piece of yourself, right? With your friends, with your family, with your coworkers, or maybe you're sheltering a dream, right? You have your little dream and it's built under a shelter because it's really protected there, right? So what would it look like for you to unshelter that piece of your life, to kind of open it up and realize, hey, maybe I don't need this protection from this storm and this bad weather. Maybe I just need to kind of see what's out there. And again, this letter, it was such a blessing. I'm, you know, taking it with me, and the another thing that he shared is, the God I serve is a God that is just, faithful, gracious, caring, creator, life giver, and forgiving. He is the reason that I get up and make it day to day in this world. I know that he is very fond of you too. And so I think, what would it look like for me to open up the shelter and start to believe that, right? What would change for my life? Um, 'Cause I have been a lot of sheltered, and I think this, Eli's been an inspiration to me in person and on this paper from a long time ago. Always keep notes, always do them. I don't keep a lot of things, but I always keep my notes in my books. But yeah, so that piece of being sheltered, what would that look like? So thank you for tuning in. It's been such a joy to kind of share my journey and where I'm at right now. And again, always curious, what are you questioning? What would you like to see more of? Who do you want to see? What kind of topics? There's a lot of topics going on out there that people are really confused about. So I'd love to hear from you on what that looks like. So thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great day. And remember, question everything.